Do you ever wonder what it was like to grow old before modern medicine, before retirement homes, before all the comforts we know? What happened to the medieval elderly in a world from around the 5th to the 15th century, where life was often short and hard? Did they just fade away, or did they find incredible ways to stay vital and necessary? Number 5. Keepers of knowledge and lore. Imagine a time when books were rare treasures, painstakingly copied by hand, far too expensive for most people to own. There were no public libraries, no internet, no samlus giving you instant access to information. In such a world, knowledge was precious, and the people who held it in their minds were living libraries. The medieval elderly, the grandfathers and grandmothers, the long-lived community members were exactly that. They were the custodians of centuries of accumulated wisdom, the living encyclopedias of their villages and families. Their minds held the stories, the histories, the practical skills, and the customary laws that kept society functioning. This was not just a hobby. It was a fundamental purpose, deeply woven into the daily rhythm of life. One of the most captivating roles they played was as storytellers. Evenings, especially during the long, cold winter months, were often spent, gathered around a hearth. There, the elder would begin to speak, their voice carrying the weight of years and experience. They would recount epic tales of heroes and saints, ancient battles and mythical creatures. These were not simply entertainment, they were lessons. Through these narratives, children learned about bravery, morality, faith, and the values of their community. They heard stories of their ancestors, understanding their lineage and their place in the world. Old ballads passed down through generations taught history, often about kings and queens, or local events that shaped their village. These verbal traditions were the primary way history survived. Chroniclers might record events in Latin on parchment, but for the vast majority of people, their understanding of the past came from the lips of an elder. Records from the period, like the accounts of traveling minstrels who sometimes learned new songs from village elders, confirm the importance of this oral tradition. Beyond grand narratives, the elderly held a vast store of practical knowledge. Consider agriculture, the bedrock of medieval society. Farming was a highly localized affair, deeply dependent on understanding the specific land, the local weather patterns, and the subtle cues of nature. A young farmer, fresh to managing his own plot, would turn to his grandfather or the oldest farmer in the village for advice. When was the best time to sow barley in this particular field? What did the clouds mean for tomorrow's rain? How could one tell if the soil was ready for planting? The elders had seen countless seasons cycle through. They knew which remedies worked for blight on the crops, which herbs deterred pests, and how to tell a healthy animal from a sickly one. Their advice was not just helpful. It could mean the difference between a bountiful harvest and starvation. Accounts from manorial records sometimes refer to elders being consulted on matters of crop rotation or land usage, highlighting their practical expertise. Herbal medicine was another domain where the elderly, particularly older women, excelled. Before pharmacies and doctors were widely accessible, knowledge of medicinal plants was critical. Grandmothers and village crones knew which roots could reduce a fever, which leaves could soothe a wound, and which berries were poisonous. They understood the delicate balance of humors and the traditional uses of hundreds of plants. They gathered, dried, and prepared these remedies, passing their knowledge down to their daughters and granddaughters. Old recipe books, though rare, sometimes contain remedies that would have been orally transmitted for generations before being written down, demonstrating the depth of this inherited wisdom. The practice of midwifery also often fell to experienced older women who had delivered many babies throughout their lives and possessed a profound understanding of childbirth and infant care. Crafts and trades also relied heavily on the knowledge and experience of older artisans. Apprenticeships were long, often lasting 7 years or more, and they culminated in a young person becoming a journeyman, then eventually a master. The masters, by definition, were the most experienced, and often the oldest members of a guild or a craft community. They had spent decades honing their skills, whether as blacksmiths, weavers, carpenters, or masons. They knew the subtle nuances of their materials, the most efficient techniques in how to produce work of exceptional quality. Their purpose was to ensure the continuity of their craft, passing down not just the basic movements, but the tricks of the trade, the secrets of perfection that only years of practice could reveal. Guild records, which meticulously outline the training requirements for apprentices, often emphasize the long tenure and expertise expected of master craftsmen. An aging weaver, though perhaps slower at the loom, still held the knowledge of complex patterns and dyes that a younger artisan might struggle with. A retired stonemason might still be called upon to advise on the structural integrity of a new building, his eyes seeing faults or strengths that others missed. Furthermore, the medieval elderly were crucial for maintaining customary law and social order. In many communities, especially in rural areas, formal legal systems were distant and difficult to access. Disputes over land boundaries, inheritance, or local customs were often settled within the village, based on tradition and memory. Who owned that piece of land 2 generations ago? Was it customary for the miller to take a certain percentage of the grain? The oldest members of the community, those who had lived through the most seasons and witnessed the most events, were the arbiters of these matters. They remembered who had married, whom what agreements had been made, and how similar disputes had been resolved in the past. Their testimony, based on lived experience and shared memory, carried immense weight. Manorial court rolls frequently show elders being called upon to provide evidence regarding long-standing customs or rights, underscoring their role as living legal archives. Their purpose here was to ensure fairness, uphold tradition, and prevent conflict, providing a sense of stability and continuity in a world without extensive written legal codes for every local situation. They were the unofficial historians of the community, their memories forming the basis of shared identity and legal precedent. This role as living repositories of knowledge gave the medieval elderly an undeniable purpose and a high degree of respect. They were not seen as disposable or irrelevant. They were essential. Their very existence ensured that the past was connected to the present, that hard-won practical skills were not lost, and that the cultural identity of the community endured. They were the bridge between generations, the storytellers who connected children to their heritage, the experts who advised on survival, and the wise ones who kept the peace. Their minds were their most valuable assets, and in a world hungry for information and guidance, their wisdom provided an invaluable, irreplaceable service. The medieval elderly were not just old, they were knowledgeable, and that knowledge was their enduring purpose. Number 4. Advisory and leadership. In a society built on hierarchies and tradition, age often equated to wisdom and respect. The medieval elderly, far from being sidelined, frequently held significant advisory and leadership positions both within their families and communities, and sometimes even at higher levels of society. Their long lives meant they had witnessed many changes, weathered numerous storms, and accumulated a deep reservoir of experience. This experience was not merely anecdotal. It was considered a valuable asset, making them indispensable counselors and decision-makers. Their purpose in these roles was to provide guidance, stability, and a seasoned perspective, ensuring that important choices were made with the benefit of the past. At the most fundamental level, the medieval elderly often served as the heads of their extended families. This was especially true in peasant households, but also among the nobility and urban craftsmen. The patriarch or matriarch, typically the oldest living member, made crucial decisions about property, inheritance, marriages, and the overall well-being of the family unit. Their authority stemmed from their age and their proven ability to navigate life's challenges. They arranged alliances through marriage for their children and grandchildren, managed the family's resources, whether land, livestock, or a craft workshop, and settled internal disputes. A young couple, perhaps eager to marry, would seek the blessing and counsel of the family elder. Disputes between siblings over a piece of land would often be brought before the oldest parent or grandparent for arbitration. This position carried immense responsibility and purpose. Family records and wills from the period often show the patriarch or matriarch dictating terms for future generations, indicating their continued authority and influence. They were the glue that held the often large extended family together, ensuring its survival and prosperity across generations. Beyond the family, older individuals frequently took on advisory roles within their villages and communities. In many rural areas, informal councils of elders existed, where the most respected and long-lived villagers would gather to discuss local issues. These might include disputes over shared resources, matters of customary law, or planning for collective tasks like repairing a mill or clearing a path. These elders, often retired farmers or skilled artisans, brought their lifetime of practical knowledge and their deep understanding of local traditions to these discussions. Their advice was highly sought after, and their judgments often carried more weight than any formal decree from a distant lord. Manorial court records sometimes highlight the involvement of older villagers in settling disputes, often as witnesses or arbiters confirming their recognized status. As community leaders, they provided a continuous thread of wisdom in community governance, ensuring that decisions were rooted in shared history and experience, giving them a clear and undeniable purpose. Among the nobility, age could also confer great influence. While younger lords might inherit titles and lands experienced, older nobles often served as trusted advisors to kings, queens, and powerful dukes. These older counselors had typically served in various capacities throughout their lives as soldiers, diplomats, or administrators. Their long careers meant they understood the complexities of politics, warfare, and statecraft. They could recall precedents from past reigns, predict the consequences of certain actions, and offer strategic insights that younger rulers, perhaps still learning the ropes, desperately needed. Figures like Archbishop Lanfranc, who advised William the Conqueror, or influential dowager queens who continued to exert influence long after their husbands' deaths, exemplify this. Chronicles and court records frequently mention councils of older experienced nobles who played a key role in major decisions, from declaring war to signing treaties. Their purpose was to lend gravitas, experience, and stability to the highest levels of governance, providing continuity and historical perspective to often volatile political landscapes. For those who had retired from active service, perhaps as knights or royal officials, an advisory role was a common and respected path. A knight too old for the rigors of battle might still serve as a military strategist, drawing on decades of combat experience. To advise a younger commander, a retired royal chancellor might continue to counsel the king on legal or administrative matters. Their bodies might be failing, but their minds, sharpened by years of public service, remained a powerful asset. Their purpose was to transfer accumulated wisdom, ensuring that the next generation of leaders was equipped with the best possible counsel. Even within the church, which offered a structured career path, age brought influence. Older bishops and abbots, having served for many years, were highly respected for their spiritual wisdom and administrative experience. They often sat on ecclesiastical councils, influencing church doctrine and policy. Moreover, retired or aging priests, no longer capable of leading large parishes, might serve as spiritual advisors to local communities or individuals, offering guidance on matters of faith and morality. Their long devotion to God and their extensive understanding of Scripture made them invaluable guides for the devout. Monasteries themselves often valued the presence of older monks and nuns who brought decades of spiritual practice and stability to the community, serving as mentor to younger initiates. The medieval elderly's involvement in legal processes also highlights their advisory purpose. While not all elders were formally appointed judges, they often played crucial roles in local legal proceedings. They might serve on juries, especially in manorial courts, where their knowledge of local customs and the history of land ownership was vital. in rendering fair judgments. Their participation ensured that justice was administered not just according to formal law, but also in harmony with the community's long-standing traditions and understanding. Their memories, as mentioned earlier, were often the most reliable source of evidence regarding long-held rights or obligations. Their presence in these proceedings provided legitimacy and authority, ensuring that decisions were respected by the community. In essence, the medieval world valued the seasoned perspective that only a long life could provide. The elderly were not seen as a burden, but as a source of stability, knowledge, and sound judgment. Whether guiding a family, advising a village council, or counseling a king, their roles were steeped in purpose. They provided the steady hand of experience, the calm voice of wisdom, and the crucial link to the past, ensuring that society could navigate the present and plan for the future with the benefit of accumulated understanding. This societal recognition of their inherent value ensured that the medieval elderly found significant and lasting purpose in their advisory and leadership capacities. Number 3. Domestic and family support. Life in the medieval era was a collective effort. Few individuals lived truly alone, and the family unit, often extended, was the primary social and economic safety net. Within this structure, the medieval elderly played an absolutely vital role, providing indispensable domestic and family support. Even when their physical strength might have waned, their experience, presence, and ability to manage household affairs ensured they remained deeply purposeful members of their family groups. Their contributions were not always about heavy labor, but about the intricate web of care, nurturing, and management that kept a household thriving. One of the most heartwarming and practical roles performed by the medieval elderly was childcare. In a world where families were large and infant mortality rates were high, and where parents often worked long hours in the fields or workshops, grandparents stepped in. Grandmothers in particular were often the primary caregivers for young children. They rocked babies, told stories, taught basic skills like knot tying or identifying common plants, and instilled manners and moral values. This freed up the younger generation, the parents, to focus on physically demanding tasks like farming, weaving, or trading, which were essential for the family's survival. The presence of an elderly relative meant the children were not left unsupervised, providing a layer of safety and continuous education. Archaeological finds from medieval homes sometimes include small, child-size items or toys, suggesting a domestic environment where children were present and cared for, likely with the involvement of older family members. Their purpose here was fundamental, ensuring the next generation was nurtured, educated, and prepared for life. Beyond direct childcare, older individuals, especially women, often took on significant roles in household management. Running a medieval household was a complex undertaking. It involved managing food stores, preparing meals, mending clothes, spinning wool, supervising younger domestic servants, if the family was wealthy enough to have them, and maintaining cleanliness. While heavy tasks like grinding grain or kneading large batches of dough might fall to younger, stronger members, the elderly foresaw the overall operation. They knew the recipes, the best ways to preserve food, how to stretch resources during lean times, and how to make dyes or candles. They were the seasoned managers, ensuring efficiency and preventing waste. A grandmother might sit by the hearth spinning wool into yarn, a task that required dexterity and patience rather than brute strength, contributing directly to the household's textile needs. She might also supervise younger women as they prepared meals, passing on generations of culinary knowledge. Wills from the period sometimes make specific provisions for elderly relatives to continue living in the family home, often describing them as being cared for, but also implicitly recognizing their continued contribution to the household's smooth function. Care for the sick and infirm was another critical area where the elderly, particularly older women, found purpose. Before hospitals were widespread and trained doctors were rare, most illness and injury were managed at home. Experienced older women often served as informal nurses and healers within the family and community. They knew traditional remedies, understood how to prepare poultices and tinctures, and could offer comfort and basic care. They might tend to a child with a fever, an injured family member, or a neighbor suffering from a chronic ailment. Their long experience with various illnesses and their practical knowledge of herbal remedies made them invaluable in times of sickness. While their remedies were often based on superstition as much as science, their care and presence provided crucial support and comfort. This role provided a clear and deeply personal purpose: to alleviate suffering and preserve health within their immediate circle. The medieval elderly also provided emotional stability and continuity within the family. Their presence linked the present generation to the past. They were the family memory, recalling stories of ancestors, celebrating traditions, and reinforcing family values. In a world of constant change and often unpredictable hardships, the unchanging presence of an elder provided a sense of security and belonging. They were the calm voices in times of crisis, drawing on their long experience to offer perspective and reassurance. Their presence could be a powerful anchor, reminding younger generations of their roots and their collective strength. This emotional support, though intangible, was profoundly purposeful, strengthening family bonds and fostering resilience. Consider the role of older men within the household. While physically demanding farm labor might become too much, an older man could still contribute significantly to lighter duties. He might mend tools, repair fences, care for small livestock, like chickens or goats, tend a kitchen garden, or oversee the storage of grain. He might also take on roles requiring precision rather than strength, such as sharpening tools or weaving baskets. His watchful eye and experienced hand ensured that the household's equipment was maintained and its smaller resources managed effectively. These tasks, while seemingly minor, were vital for the self-sufficiency of a medieval family. His continued participation even in these lighter roles provided purpose and reinforced his standing as a contributing member. For families with significant landholdings or businesses, older members might shift from active management to an oversight role. A retired lord or lady might still offer advice on estate management, review accounts, or preside over family gatherings. A merchant too old to travel might manage the family's books, handle correspondence, or oversee local sales. These roles, though less physically taxing, required considerable intellect and experience, ensuring the continuity of the family's wealth and status. Their purpose was to safeguard the family's legacy and provide strategic direction. The domestic and family support offered by the medieval elderly was not merely a matter of charity. It was a fundamental necessity. In a society without extensive social welfare systems, each family member needed to contribute in some way. The elderly, by providing childcare, managing the household, caring for the sick, and offering emotional stability, filled crucial gaps and ensured the overall well-being and survival of their family unit. Their contributions were often quiet and understated, but they were the threads that held the fabric of daily life together, giving them a profound and essential purpose. Number 2. Economic contribution through specialized or lighter labor. The popular image of medieval life often focuses on physically demanding labor, especially in agriculture. It is easy to assume that once a person's body began to fail, their economic contributions ceased. However, this was far from the reality for many medieval elderly. While they might retire from the heaviest work, their experience and skill often allowed them to transition into roles involving specialized or lighter labor, ensuring they continued to contribute economically and thereby maintaining a vital purpose within their communities. Their value was often found not in raw strength, but in accumulated expertise and precision. One significant area of continued economic contribution was in skilled crafts. Many trades like weaving, pottery, tailoring, or shoemaking required years, sometimes decades, To truly master, an older artisan, though perhaps slower than a younger counterpart, possessed an unparalleled level of skill, knowledge of complex techniques, and an understanding of the nuances of their materials. They might focus on fine, intricate work that demanded precision and patience rather than speed or brute force. An aging master weaver, for instance, might no longer be able to operate a large, heavy loom for hours on end, but they could still be invaluable for designing intricate patterns, preparing the warp, or performing delicate mending. A shoemaker, with stiff joints, might not be able to hammer leather all day, but they could still cut patterns with absolute precision, or add the finishing touches that spoke of quality. Guild records, while sometimes outlining pension-like arrangements for older members, also often mention their continued role in supervising quality or training apprentices, suggesting ongoing contributions. Their purpose here was to uphold the standards of their craft and produce high-value goods that relied on years of practiced expertise. Within the agricultural sphere, even if heavy plowing or harvesting was no longer possible, there were numerous lighter tasks that could be performed. Older women in particular often continued to spin wool or flax into thread. This was a continuous necessary task for every household, and it could be done while sitting by the fire or outside in the sun. The yarn produced was essential for making clothes, blankets, and other textiles. This repetitive, skilled work was perfect for aging hands that still possessed dexterity. Similarly, older individuals might tend small kitchen gardens, growing herbs for medicine and cooking, or vegetables for the family table. They might care for small livestock, like chickens collecting eggs, or manage a few goats tasks that required less physical exertion than working large fields. Winnowing grain, a task that separated the lighter chaff from the heavier grain, often involved a careful, rhythmic motion that could be performed by those less physically robust. Accounts from manor life often detail a variety of tasks performed by all members of a household, with older members typically assigned less strenuous but equally vital roles. Beyond production, older individuals often took on supervisory or managerial roles. A former farmer, too old to work the fields, might still oversee the younger generations, advising on crop rotation, animal care, or the timing of various agricultural tasks. Their experienced eye could spot potential problems or suggest more efficient methods. A retired steward or bailiff for a lord might continue to manage accounts, collect rents from tenants, or oversee inventories of grain and livestock. These roles, relying on literacy, numeracy, and organizational skills, were highly valued and not dependent on physical strength. They provided a crucial economic purpose by ensuring efficient management of resources and continuity in administration. Market activities also offered opportunities for economic contribution. Older women might sell small goods they had produced, themselves eggs from their chickens, herbs from their gardens, or small handicrafts like baskets, or simple knitted items at local markets. This provided a small but vital income for themselves or their families. They might also act as informal traders, brokering small deals, or providing information about prices and availability of goods, leveraging their long-standing connections within the community. The flexibility of these roles allowed them to contribute at their own pace, according to their remaining capabilities. Moreover, certain specialized, often solitary tasks were perfectly suited for the elderly. For example, net making and mending for fishermen or basket weaving for farmers were intricate tasks that required patience and skill. An elderly individual could perform these tasks, contributing directly to the tools and equipment needed for the family's primary economic activity. Likewise, within wealthier households, an older woman might specialize in mending and preserving fine linens and clothes, a meticulous task that extended the life of valuable possessions. Their purpose here was to preserve and enhance existing resources, thereby saving the household money and labor. The economic contribution of the medieval elderly demonstrates that value was not solely measured by physical output. Their purpose was found in their ability to continue to produce goods, manage resources, and apply their accumulated skills in ways that directly benefited their families and communities. Their roles were often indispensable, filling niches that required experience, precision, and patience rather than brute force. This integration into the ongoing economic life of the medieval world ensured that older individuals remained active, valued, and purposeful members of society long after the heavy labor of youth was behind them. Number 1. Religious devotion and spiritual guidance. For the medieval mind, religion was not just a Sunday activity. It was a framework of existence, permeating every aspect of life, from birth to death. The church was the most powerful institution, and spiritual salvation was the ultimate goal. In this deeply devout world, the elderly found profound purpose in religious devotion, and by offering spiritual guidance, their long lives were often seen as a sign of God's favor, and their proximity to death sometimes granted them a unique spiritual authority. Their contributions were not merely about personal piety, but about reinforcing the spiritual life of their families and communities. Many elderly individuals, particularly those who had lived a long and often hard life, chose to dedicate their twilight years more intensely to God. For some, this meant entering a monastery or nunnery. These religious houses often accepted older individuals who wished to spend their remaining time in prayer, contemplation, and service, while younger novices might enter for a lifetime of rigorous physical and intellectual work. Older converts or oblates might be admitted with the understanding that their primary role was spiritual. They contributed through their constant prayers, their participation in daily services, and their very presence, which lent an air of solemnity and spiritual depth to the community. Records from various monastic foundations sometimes mention older individuals joining or living within the monastic walls, offering a structured environment where their spiritual lives could flourish. Their purpose within the monastery was to be prayer warriors, dedicating their final years to intercession for the world, for their benefactors, and for the souls of the departed. Even for those who did not enter religious orders, intensified lay piety was a common path for the elderly. With fewer family obligations or physical demands, older men and women could devote more time to prayer, reading scripture, if literate, attending Mass, and performing acts of charity. They might spend hours praying for their family's well-being, for the souls of the dead, or for the general good of the community. They often became pillars of their local church, perhaps assisting with cleaning, decorating, or preparing for services. Wills from the period frequently include bequests for prayers or masses to be said after the testator's death, indicating a profound concern for spiritual matters in later life. This active devotion was a source of great personal purpose and was highly respected by others. Furthermore, the medieval elderly were often seen as vital sources of spiritual guidance. Having navigated the trials and temptations of life, they possessed a deep understanding of faith, morality, and the human condition. Younger family members or villagers would often turn to an older, respected individual for advice on matters of conscience, dilemmas of faith, or interpreting scripture. A grandmother might teach her grandchildren their catechism, tell them stories of saints, or lead them in prayer. An old man known for his piety might mediate a moral dispute or offer solace to someone struggling with sin or grief. Their long experience was equated with spiritual wisdom, making them informal spiritual counselors in their communities. Their purpose here was to uphold moral standards and provide comfort and direction on the path to salvation. Pilgrimages were another significant religious activity, often undertaken by the elderly, provided they had the means and physical capacity. A pilgrimage to a holy site, such as Jerusalem, Rome, or Santiago de Compostela, was considered a profound act of devotion or in thanksgiving for blessings. For the elderly, it could be a culminating spiritual journey, a final act of devotion before death. While arduous, the spiritual rewards and the potential for miracles made it a deeply purposeful endeavor. Accounts from pilgrims often include descriptions of older individuals undertaking these journeys, highlighting their resilience and fervent faith. The veneration of relics and the performance of good works also offered purpose. Older individuals might dedicate their remaining resources to commissioning religious art, donating to their local church, or supporting charitable causes. These acts of piety were believed to earn spiritual merit and ensure a favorable afterlife. They might also actively care for the poor, the sick, or the orphaned, seeing this as an act of Christian charity. These acts of benevolence, performed with a lifetime of experience and wisdom, were often more effective and ample than those of younger, less experienced philanthropists. Their purpose here was to contribute to the salvation of their souls and the spiritual welfare of their community through tangible good deeds. In some cases, the elderly, particularly older women, chose to become anchoresses or recluses. This involved living a solitary life of prayer and contemplation, often in a small cell attached to a church with little contact with the outside world. While extreme, this was seen as the highest form of spiritual devotion. Figures like Julian of Norwich, who lived a long life as an anchoress writing about her mystical visions, exemplify this path. Such individuals were revered for their intense piety and were often sought out by people from all walks of life for spiritual counsel, receiving visitors through a small window. Their solitary dedication was seen as a powerful intercessory act, providing a profound and singular purpose. The medieval elderly's deep engagement with religious life provided them with a clear, socially recognized, and profoundly personal purpose. It was a purpose rooted in the belief system that shaped their entire world. Through prayer, acts of charity, spiritual guidance, and sometimes even monastic retreat, they contributed to the spiritual well-being of their families and communities. Their age, rather than being a mark of decline, was often seen as a testament to their enduring faith and a sign of their proximity to God. This elevated their status and ensured they remained vital, revered, and deeply purposeful members of medieval society.